Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Dynamic Sketching 2 CGMW Master Classes. We're going to be going over a few things for week 1. We're going to recap Dynamic 1. Now, for those of you that have taken the classes before, hopefully you've been practicing kind of, adding up that mileage and just kind of upkeeping with the drawing and all that stuff. Because I've always, talked about this. If you kind of stop drawing, this is not like riding a bike. You can't get back on it and just start going again. You're going to lose that connection of your muscle memory from your hand to your eye. The coordination goes away. The steps, the procedures, all that stuff, you may remember, but again, it is all about upkeep. And so for this week, that's what I like to kind of concentrate on, just more about what we did for week 1, or not week 1, but Dynamic Sketching 1, and all the stuff we kind of went through real quickly. So we'll spend about a good 40-45 minutes just talking about that. And I'll do a lot of demos up on the board, and I'll also talk about what to look forward to for the next, 7-8 weeks for Dynamic 2. Now, on the website, I posted up all the locations where we'll be heading to, and hopefully everybody has found, or at least researched a little bit in terms of where you need to go. And if you can't get to a certain location, just let me know, so that way we can kind of coordinate something that if you just want to use reference images off a line, online, then okay, that's the only option we'll have. I mean, at least, if you can go to a few of the places that we have listed, that's better than nothing, So that's why we were very restricting of who could take Dynamic 2 and make sure the people that took Dynamic 1 will be able to take this class and have the access to all the places that I'll be going to. And so every week from here on out is pretty much on location drawing. I personally went out to a lot of locations I take my students to, and we recorded, and I did a lot of demos and drawings. And so just kind of look forward to that, okay? So every week prior to a location, I'll be doing chalkboard drawings, intros to that as well. So yes, I will be doing a lot of chalkboard drawing, so look forward to that. So yeah, let's get into week 1, okay? And I hope you guys have kept a lot of your old work, put it aside. You can always go back, rummage through it, see what's left over, and if you wanted to come back and practice that over again, please do so, okay? Since you guys have taken Dynamic 1, I expect you guys to not only work harder, do better work, but also upkeep on the homework, not on just the mileage aspect of it, but also in the kind of projects that I'm going to be assigning. And so when we took Dynamic 1, we had one redesign, which was plant-based. Now, we're not going to be doing the arboretum or plants for Dynamic 2 because we already handled that. But everybody should and hopefully understand what I'm looking for when it comes to dynamic, or not dynamic, but the redesigns of Dynamic 2, okay? Except now the themes have changed. Now, we're not doing plants anymore. We're going to be doing things like animals, insects, cars, tanks, planes, all that kind of stuff. So we're handling both ends, organic and mechanical. Where with Dynamic 1, we only handled just one aspect of it. And a lot of the big chunk of Dynamic 1 was the warm-ups, getting that good, mileage and hand-eye coordination, which is why it's so imperative that you have taken that one first. So with the redesigns, I'm not going to be going into too much about what I'm, how to develop it or what I'm going to look for or ask for. I'm just going to assign it, and I expect you guys to turn in what I'm already looking for because you guys have done it before. It's going to be a lot more work than Dynamic 1. It's a lot more labor intensive, a lot more hours. So I hope you guys do upkeep with it and just put in the kind of work that I'm expecting. Again, this is not like an advanced version. This is just an extension of what we had for Dynamic 1. So consider what we had before with this class as just one long, giant class, okay? All right, let's get into actually just start drawing on the board. And we're going to go back all the way to the beginning of Dynamic 1, which was, the early stuff. Lines, ellipses, contours, shapes, organic and geometric, things like core shadows, cast shadows, texture, all that stuff. I just want to go through and just kind of, reinvigorate that stuff in you guys' head again, okay? Just so you can see me do it again, and also from maybe this is a better perspective. I don't know how well you could have seen me draw on the chalkboard before. So let's get into the basic just line again. And this is going to be part of the homework. All the stuff basically is being condensed from Dynamic 1 into 1 week, and I expect you guys to do all this work in this 1 week, all right? give me a couple minutes so I can kind of set up the board. Okay, so lines, ellipses, textures, contours, shapes. But before we even get into this, these 5 forms, and I hope you remember them. These are the 5 shapes that we're going to be playing with, much like we did with Dynamic 1 with the plants and everything. Same applies to the stuff we're going to be doing future. Animals, mechanical tanks, cars. These shapes will apply to both ends. And so with Dynamic 2, what I kind of want you guys to pull away from, what I want you to get and understand, not only just more mileage in drawing, but also a better understanding of how to just see, how to see shapes, not just in the organic side of things, but also on the mechanical side of things, and the fact that there really is no difference to me. To me, drawing, a giraffe is no different to drawing a car. There is no difference. So if you understand that, you just have to look past it. One of the bigger problems now that's going to come up as we try to use different themes, and I'm sure some of you may have seen it with Dynamic 1 when you're going to the Arboretum. I mean, plants is one thing. There is some complexity there. But overall, it's not a large-scale object. You guys were drawing a lot of small little plants. But things will change up a little bit when you start going into things like animals, larger scale objects. We have more complexities, things like in cars and military vehicles. We have to be able to learn, continue to look past all of that, because the details are last. First and foremost, the simple shapes. We just layer and layer and layer and layer. If obviously you guys have taken Dynamic 1, I want you guys to really push yourselves for this Dynamic 2. Not in the fact that I want you to render every single little drawing, and that's one of the issues that always comes up with Dynamic 1, was when you guys are drawing, you render stuff all the time. You got to be able to still learn how to stop and give me simple stuff first, and even though we're drawing stuff that's more complicated, that doesn't mean I want it to be as complicated or more rendered, just because it is what you're seeing. Keep things simple first. So I'm going to keep you guys in check, and when I assign work, I'll be very particular about what I want to see, okay? Alright, first thing, just the basic line. And again, this class, we're only using the felt tip pen. I'll give you guys a bunch of links and stuff like that if you need them to find a place to purchase online. And hopefully you guys have maybe maintained a few of the links or locations where you can go and get those things. We're using still the same brown paper and the felt tip and the markers, no warm tip, okay? So basic line. Let's just start out with these. We're doing the same exercise and warm-ups, and just because you're in a Dynamic 2 doesn't mean we don't want to upkeep with this stuff. Again, the foundation of Dynamic 1, this stuff is far more important than you realize. So the basic ideas of line, ellipses, and textures, okay? So line. We have 2-inch, half page, full page. This is stuff that I still do myself. I've been teaching this a long time. I've been drawing years and years and years. And I still warm up all the time. So the lines and ellipses, to me, are also probably most important. You could just be sitting down somewhere, cafe, or waiting for a plane or a ride. This stuff you could just knock out anywhere on a napkin, in one of your sketchbooks, whatever. And it's just to continually practice that connection of your arm to your brain. And that's all it is. Remember, each of these you're going over 8 times. If I still see a lot of this kind of stuff, and if you're doing it, just be wary of it. Keep that control, okay? For a lot of you guys are going to be taking this, don't rush. Speed will come naturally. And I've talked about this before. But I'll be repeating a lot of things throughout this this class, and especially things you might have heard from Dynamic 1, because that repetition of me saying things over and over again is what's going to help you stick in your mind. And so the same idea of you guys repeating a drawing over again helps you remember those shapes better. And I'll repeat a lot of the same kinds of advices of drawing and sketching that hopefully will kind of stick into your brain. So again, the lines we're doing 2-inch, half page, full page, 8 times over, nice and controlled. For this week's particular homework, what I'm going to be looking for is all the stuff we've covered in Dynamic 1, which will be the lines, ellipses, textures, organic shapes, contours, and a bit of shadow, core shadow and cast shadow, and that will span about 8 pages. Okay. All this stuff in the homework will be posted on the website, so there really shouldn't be any question of what is due. All right, pretty clear about the lines. Simple stuff. Ellipses too, same thing, what we've always done. Changing up the scaling. Small ellipses, larger ellipses, even larger. Changing the angle and degree of the ellipse. And you guys know all this stuff, so. Maintain a loose line and nice motion. So true it up. Always go through the motion of the ellipse first. As you get more confident and comfortable with that motion, then you lightly put that line down and go back and reinforce it, going darker, chewing it up. Okay, now hopefully you guys have been practicing this more than anything else, because the ellipses, and like you guys know, is pretty much the hardest thing to do. This will come into play in pretty much all of the things we'll be drawing, organic or mechanical. Things like with animals, we'll be building with ellipses, insects, bones, all that kind of stuff. Even on the mechanical side, we've got to draw cars and tanks. What will this be? Wheels. And trust me, that's going to frustrate you to no end, but still, only freehand drawing, and just make sure you practice that a lot, and it'll get better and better. Let's talk about textures real quick. Textures will also be, quite interesting, because when we were doing with plant stuff, generally the textures were somewhat similar in terms of the organization or how you wanted to texturize certain leaves or the bark. Once we start getting into things like animals and even hard surface stuff like heavy metals, how do we indicate those kinds of details? And we'll talk more about them as we go through the weeks, okay? But for now, just a general practice of texturing, going back and learning, relearning, going dark to light, so gradations. Remember, focal point, important lesson from Dynamic 1. A good focal point is going to help you with really nice sketches, because the more complex of the object that we get, the more the focal point we need, so that we can kind of control and allocate the shadows, the details, and the value, all that kind of stuff. So within the textures, remember, dark. few more examples. Again, pushing heavy dark into light. For this particular week, I only want you guys just playing with the pen. A little bit of marker if you need it for the ellipses and whatnot. And also when we start getting into shadows. Let's stay away from the highlights still, okay? I have introduced things like highlights and coloring from Dynamic 1, and that will come into play. So as soon as we start getting into week 2 and we go on location, I'll open the gates, and you guys are more than welcome to use all that stuff, okay? And I'll keep reminding you about how to use it and what not to do with it. Highlights are just as we call it, highlights. It's only for the light source. Colors, keep maintaining really good control, focal points. We don't want to get too crazy with them. And I don't expect every single sketch that you guys have to have fully rendered out highlights and colors. I still want to see a lot of development work, a lot of thumbnailing, and maybe just like the last 2 sketches is where you apply those applications of color or lights. So maintaining that self-discipline, okay? 3 subjects that are going to be covered for this week that I want you guys to do for homework. Let's go into forms and shapes, and especially about contours. And contours we still want to use quite a bit. And what was contours for from Dynamic 1? It's there to, indicate the direction of the form that's turning. And also a guideline for you to basically use as a direction for your textures or even shadows and how you want to place your cross hatching. And I always say, follow your contours. So here we have a shape. Remember what we always did? Center line. What is the center line? It does not have to be straight. It can curve. With that center line, I can now follow around it. If we have a direction here and I have an ellipse, it basically just wraps around that center line. These center lines can branch. Okay. And the contours, remember, you don't have to cover the entire shape with them. You don't want to checkerboard it. Just enough information for you to understand how that form is turning. That's all it's there for. And that could be a cat shadow or something. But I slightly indicated now about shadows. We have a light source. And now we have a core shadow. The core shadow, we have a cast shadow. Please do practice this week. Good indication of cores and casts and knowing the difference is going to be very helpful for you guys for the coming weeks. You know, how we'll actually apply them on a hard surface or a furry surface if it's an animal. We'll go into more detail about a little later on. But in general, just make sure we can still eye certain things like that about core shadows and cast shadows. Okay. Organic forms, branching contours, general stuff we've already gone over. Okay. This is going to be also a part of your work this week. I want you to create organic shapes and forms, contour them, add a cast shadow and a core shadow. Application of a texture onto a shape. Maybe you can apply a few of them on some of the forms, but not all of them. Okay. I still want to start out a little simply. Start out with some simple shapes. Get more complex as you go. Things like dissections that we've talked about, we'll stay away from that for now, okay? Because we've already gone through that, and it is a lot of work to do. The 5-shape relationships of putting those forms together, again, that won't be part of this week. You know it, and if you want to do it, please, you know, reattempt those kinds of shapes and forms. You know, trying to play with all 5 of those forms and shapes. When we start getting to things like the mechanical objects, you know, if we look at a basic shape of a tank, we can take any of these forms like the cube and the cylinder and create that general shape. And it's just combining those forms together into a form that can resemble something. And so this week, if you'd like to tackle that, I wouldn't mind seeing it. But in general, what I'm really looking for is still the really basic stuff, which was line, ellipses, texture, organic shapes with contours, and maybe some of the more geometric forms, like taking a cube or whatnot, or a triangle, and putting those together into a shape like this, a simple one, and contouring it out. Let's see. Other things to handle, the shadow. You know, if you don't want to do it with the pen, the cross hatching, which is anyway a good thing to practice, I say just start it out with the marker first. Really just kind of hammer all that stuff out. You know, not individually. So what I like to probably see is on a single page. You know, the way you should normally start out if you have your book. And this is the way I think you guys should be drawing in general when we're on site. When we have to allocate a lot of detail and interest in a certain area, and I guess when it comes to these shapes and forms, we have them on a page. Spread your interest, okay? Don't just isolate your eyes or focus into just one and just render the crap out of it and just kind of, you know, focus on how much you can do to that one shape. Kind of spread yourself out a little bit. Like I said, start with a marker. So maybe you start indicating shadows. Core shadows and cast shadows, and you do it lightly with the marker, and just you go from one shape to another, so you're consistently moving from one drawing to another, and that constant movement of not isolating yourself to one object and staying there for 15 to 20 minutes, where you're moving on and then coming back to it. So it's when you guys are working on stuff, and I'm sure you've done this many times, you know, look at your piece and you'll sit there for hours on end working on it. You lose sight of what you're trying to do, and it becomes, I don't know, kind of hard to focus on what you were trying to initiate, your original goal was. And so it's best to always just step away, you know, try doing something else, and then come back to it and you start noticing things that you never really noticed before. Same thing with just the drawing on the page, where when the first thing you should just do is draw those shapes. All 3 of them, okay? And then after that, start indicating the shadows, cast shadows, the marker. All 3 of them, not just one. After you do all 3 of those, you go to one individual one and reinforce those, you know, sketches of the shadows and cast shadows with the pen and the cross hatching. And then you just go through the line doing that, okay? So you don't just draw one on the page and do the whole step. Always move on to a new shape. So that's going to help you guys just to practice speed as well, to continually to build up momentum and always pushing forward. A lot of the times people will start one sketch and they'll take it to the extreme and finish it off, and then you guys will be exhausted and done, and you don't want to work on any other stuff. So it's always best to just fill up a page first with just basic line drawings and just take that step by step, okay? And that's going to be crucial when you guys are actually on site, which I'm sure most of you have kind of already seen when you're drawing a lot of the plants. Okay, let's tackle a few more other things. Let me get rid of a few of these drawings. Okay, I actually want to talk about a little bit about the redesigns and the homework that I'm going to be assigning. And I will go into more detail of specifics of that particular theme. But I just want to give you guys a general idea. And like I said earlier, you guys know what you should be doing for the redesigns. But I just want to talk about the presentation of how I want to see things kind of laid out. And it should be, hopefully consistent with all of you guys that are going to be submitting stuff. With the redesigns, I don't limit you guys to, a number of pages. Is there a minimum? A minimum would be 2 pages of ideations and, of course, a final sheet of your finalized design. Now, that's minimum, and I really would love to see a lot more. This is going to be a lot more of a hectic pace because we're doing a redesign every week, and so you really have to upkeep and keep on your toes of being able to think fast. And so what I really want you guys to take away from the redesign process of this week by week is not actually the drawing. The drawing mileage comes from you guys being on site, drawing with stuff in front, stuff in front of you. The redesign helps with the thinking, the problem solving, you consistently being able to just process information really quickly, and also being able to communicate those ideas really well on paper. So when it comes to the redesign, the reason why I like to do it week by week and keep that steady pace and keep it fast is that when I'm giving you guys an issue, a problem, much like in the industry, if a boss gives you a particular design challenge, you got to be able to think quickly, and you're given this amount of time. Show me what you can do, okay? That's the general idea. And so what I'd like to see from the redesign is 2-3 pages of ideation where you're doing a lot of thumbnails, a lot of writing, a lot of composition studies, inspiration studies, and then developing all that and refinement. Taking one idea, isolating it, doing more studies and silhouettes, isolating one of those, finishing it off. I expect you guys to kind of stumble on your first one, and that's okay. Remember, I want to see failures, and so if you're not failing at it, then you're not going to learn from it. And that's going to be important for you, even at this stage and level, because this is still just connected with Dynamic 1. I don't want to see more of an advancement and everything. I know that people, like anybody who's starting this, you guys are going to have a hard time in the beginning again, okay? So that's okay. Be frustrated,